Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being a part of this informational session I'm doing today just to learn more about Kingdom Factor. Got a couple of you here online with me live, and then I'm going to send this out to a few of you just via recording as well who couldn't make it. But no, it means a lot that you would even just come and take the time to learn more about what I'm doing, what I feel like God's called me into, and just the real value I see in these peer groups of bringing like-minded Christians together who are leaders to say, hey, let's live for God's kingdom. And so the hope of the day is again just to kind of share more about what this model looks like and what it looks like to be a part of this. And so I'm going to kind of just walk us through a brief presentation here. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll just jump right into it. Kind of high level, right? I think for me, recognizing I worked as a pastor the last 15 or so years, and recognizing I think two things in that space. One, leadership and leading people can be lonely, and I know we've all experienced that at different times of as we have our hands in different things of how do we have people who are coming alongside and supporting us. And so that's partly what excites me that I think you guys will see is this is partly to combat that loneliness and isolation in leadership and saying, hey, let's surround ourselves with people who can support us. I think the second thing that I recognized is specifically, I think in the church, sometimes we don't always do a great job of empowering people in their vocation and their work and the things that they're doing throughout the week and saying, hey, what you're doing matters. And then how do we leverage that and use the things that God has gifted us with and the stewardship he's given us and the influence he's given us for his kingdom. And so excited to really lean into say, hey, what would it look like to really empower Christian leaders to be able to use, again, the influence God has given them for his kingdom. And so if I had 20 seconds, right, to describe what Kingdom Factor is, it's kind of in that red box there, right, of Christian leaders having real conversations, solving real problems, producing real results. And obviously, that word real is repeated a lot there. And yet, that's purposeful, right? I think in a world of artificial intelligence these days and social media and fake news, of saying, what does it look like to really lean into what is real and genuine and authentic and to create these real, genuine, authentic relationships that can help us produce real genuine results in a world for God's kingdom ultimately. And so that's kind of where we're going today. Again, it's just me kind of describing what Kingdom Factor is and more specifically what it looks like to kind of partner with it. And so high level, here's kind of just an overview of where we're kind of going today. Again, we'll kind of talk about the why behind the what is what I always say, right? Of understanding why something is what it is, and then kind of getting to the what, the more specifics of what it is. And so we'll kind of talk about Kingdom Factor, specifically of kind of the broader vision of what it stands for, what people in the industry are saying about peer groups specifically as a coaching model, and then kind of getting into more specifics of here's what it looks like to actually be a part of Kingdom Factor and how we do and run these peer groups. So like I said, the hope of this is just to kind of be informative. I'll have a quick little survey at the end for you guys just to kind of give me some feedback and ways that we can kind of help working together. So uh, first thing, again, kind of high level, Kingdom Factor. Obviously, you guys have probably all heard the name. That's the organization I'm partnering with, working as a coach under. And so why the name Kingdom Factor? That first word kingdom is probably a little self-explanatory, right? Of it's kind of that question and that idea of we're all building a kingdom. We're all building and working towards something, whether that's our own kingdom, whether that's our own goals, whether that's God's kingdom and the things that he has called us into. And so kingdom factor, right? It's kind of that question of saying, hey, we want to ask the question of whose kingdom are we building? And ultimately we want to say, hey, we want to be about building God's kingdom. And so that's kind of the grounding, centering space for us, again, is that word kingdom. Second part of that, kingdom factor, right? Factor maybe isn't as self-explanatory. Part of the definition there is one who acts or serves on behalf of another. And it's kind of that idea of biblical stewardship, right? Of where we are um, ultimately kind of carrying not our own sense of self and purpose, but ultimately God's purpose. And as leaders, right, we're all entrusted with money and influence and people we serve and lead with intellectual property. And so it's again asking and stating that question of how can we be people who are acting and serving on behalf of Christ and his kingdom? And so that's what we're all about, right? Of being stewards, leaders, factors for God's kingdom and saying, hey, how do we do that together as business leaders and as leaders in our community? And so a little bit of backstory of Kingdom Factor. Started back in 1998 with our founder, Ray Hilbert. He was kind of a young business leader and had some success early on in business, but then also had some failures early on in business. And he kind of got out of this place where his partner had kind of walked out on him, had some broken trust. His business fell apart. He found himself broke with nothing and kind of was left saying, hey, I think two things could have really helped me in this space. One, if I'd been surrounded with leaders who had gone before me and were walking with me to be able to kind of give me some advice and counsel would have helped me avoid some of those decisions. Second thing, he said, if I had been surrounded by people who were filled with the Holy Spirit and could give me some godly counsel, I could have avoided a lot of the pitfalls and mistakes I made. And so that kind of launched him 2.5 decades ago into saying, hey, what if I surrounded myself and just spent my time and my vocation pooling the brightest minds and Christian leaders together to create these peer groups and to be able to establish the sense of community and help other leaders out. And so, yeah, it's been what, 28 years now where he's been doing that full time and kind of built a team of coaches around him. And so their leadership team, right, they facilitated thousands of peer group sessions, hundreds of members across the country. Back in 2022, they said, hey, let's actually start kind of empowering more coaches and being able to get this out more. And so that's when they really started leaning into the training side and empowering and hiring and equipping coaches to kind of go out, myself being one of those. And so we have 100 plus coaches now across the country who are doing, again, the same model they've been doing for 28 years. And so share this partly just to kind of show that this isn't just an experiment, right? That this has been happening again for 2.5 plus decades with some just really proven groundwork and track record. And again, no model is perfect. And yet I think it's important to kind of recognize that there's some anecdotal success stories that we see through this model happening and growing. And so that's kind of where Kingdom Factor started. This comes from our executive summary. I can send this out to you guys too, but I just want to highlight a few things. Of this is specifically, again, kind of that higher level of there's so many coaching models out there. And so why peer group coaching specifically, and what is the value of peer group coaching? And so this isn't specifically about Kingdom Factor. This is more about peer group coaching and what the people in the industry and the industry standard is for a peer group coaching. And what statistics and research is actually showing is that peer group coaching is one of the more successful coaching models out there. Not one-on-one coaching, but more so saying, hey, how do we get a group of like-minded people together to help us grow? And so here's what a few just kind of, again, credible sources are saying about, again, not Kingdom Factor, but peer group coaching as a whole. This first one there is from the Boston Business Journal, obviously a very reputable journal, are accrediting some of their CEOs that are a part of these peer networks, being able to unlock higher levels of business performance and innovation, as opposed to those not a part of these peer groups. Another one there, McKinsey and Company, right? They're a top tier global management company. Back in 2020, they posted this article and did some research showing that their executives that were a part of these peer groups credited for helping them stay focused and on growth and on goals. So again, just kind of seeing some, hey, there's some proven results for people who are part of these peer groups. And then that last one there, this is by Vistage. They're kind of a top tier executive coaching firm. They partnered with Dun and Bradstreet and some of their data that they got of showing that people that were a part of peer groups actually saw 2.2% times faster growth. And so just kind of recognizing that there's some proven record here of, hey, peer groups are actually successful and helpful for business leaders and leaders specifically of saying, how do we grow together? This next one here, this is the Harvard Business Review. This is back in 2024, so pretty recent. They were saying, hey, if we're seeing that the industry is saying that peer groups are successful, what does it look like then to be a part of a healthy peer group and a helpful peer group of recognizing there's, again, so many structures out there. So if they said, if you're going to be a part of a peer group, here's 4 things to really focus on and make sure as a part of your peer group you're a part of. And so here the Harvard Business Review said, they said, first thing is membership recruitment, making sure there's kind of clear guidelines of what your membership looks like and your group looks like. They said it should be between 6 to 12 people, should have diverse backgrounds, should have also interpersonal dynamics a part of it, not just solely focused on one thing, but being able to incorporate multiple aspects. And you'll see the red things here on this slide are the ways that Kingdom Factor, again, has been doing this for the last 2.5 decades. So it's encouraging to see that, hey, the model that we've been doing, again, the Harvard Business Review is saying, hey, there's actually, we see this as what's important in peer groups. So that's what all our groups are. They're 6 to 12 members. Again, they're diverse groups. Kind of our 3 focus is helping members thrive personally, professionally, and spiritually. And so that's kind of for us what we lean into. Second thing that Harvard Business Review said is make sure that there's clear group guidelines and structure. Uh, consistent agendas, cadence, making sure there's a clear leader in the room who's facilitating. And for us, we meet monthly. We'll kind of get to that a little bit later. We have a proven kind of track record and agenda that we follow. Me as a certified coach, I'm right the one kind of facilitating that space. It's like core values of the group established and being followed is really important. Things like cadence and candor and empathy and balance. Again, things that we've been incorporating. That fourth thing, right, is establishing and maintaining momentum over a long period of time. And I think this is kind of getting at that question of sustainability of saying, hey, what is the track record of sustainability and retention rate in these groups? And for us, again, over the last 28 years, our annual retention rate of members joining these groups and staying a part of these groups each year is 87% annual retention rate. And so these are busy leaders, just like all of us, right, who woke up this morning not having more time than they knew what to do with and saying, hey, but this is something that's valuable to me and I see the value, and because of that, I want to keep doing it. And so again, there's no perfect model out there, but I think it's important to kind of recognize that we're seeing that there's some real stickiness to this of people saying, "Hey, this is important, and I want to be a part of it." Uh, with that, right? That's high level. And again, I don't want to bore us with details there. I can send you more info on that, but partly just want to kind of show, hey, here's why, again, peer groups I think are really important and really valuable. And maybe you kind of hear that and see that too, but it kind of then I think getting a little more practical. Well, hey, what is the return on investment for me? What is my ROI? I can maybe see why peer groups could be important and helpful, but for me, a busy leader, what does that look like to actually join in and be a part of something like this? And so the question I often ask, right, is, well, what is the expertise and experience in the room worth? Recognizing for us a typical Kingdom Factor peer group, right? We have 200 plus years of combined business experience and experience walking with Jesus, right? If you figure we have 10 plus leaders in a room who have been doing business for 10, 20, 30 years, have been walking with Jesus the same amount of time, that's a lot of collective wisdom that we can now pool in a room of legal experience and finance background and technology and parenting advice and marriage and relationships of saying, hey, we now get to pool that together in one space to walk with each other and kind of help each other out in that space. And so that's part of, again, I think what is that return on investment? I think it's recognizing, hey, what is the expertise and the experience in the room worth? And so another way just to kind of demonstrate that, I've been talking a little bit. I'll give us a little breather. I had a lot of caffeine, so I'm going fast this morning too, but would love for us to kind of just do a little example here. If you guys have a piece of paper or a pen handy, I want to kind of just do a quick way to kind of just, I guess, demonstrate this. And so if you don't mind grabbing a piece of paper or pen, if you don't have one, you can kind of pretend to do it on your hand and kind of fake draw. But what I want us to do is, again, kind of asking this question of what is the value of one good idea? And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up my phone as you guys are getting that piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. And what I want you to do in 20 seconds is see how many triangles you can draw in 20 seconds. And so again, I'll start the timer. I'll count us down, but see how many triangles. And again, if you're just imaginary doing, if you don't have that piece of paper or pen, keep track of how many you do. So I'm going to give us 20 seconds, and then we're going to see who can do the most in three, two, one, go. See how many triangles you can draw. All right, you're at 20 seconds. Go ahead and stop. Now go ahead and count those triangles, and then once you're done counting, kind of maybe shout out how many triangles were each able to draw in that time.
I
25.
got, go ahead, Kevin.
25.
25. Okay. Michael.
14.
All right. Nikita.
I had 10.
Love it. Well, one of you, if you don't mind, Michael, maybe if you don't mind pulling out your phone and kind of setting a 10-second timer, I'm going to do the same thing, and I want you to time me for 10 seconds. Again, you can kind of count me down. I'm going to do the same thing, drawing triangles. And so whenever you're ready, Michael, you can count me down that little 10-second timer, and we'll see um, what I can do here.
Give me a second here.
You're good. I put you on the spot.
All right, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Stop.
All right. So I got 55.
Whoa.
And the reason I got 55 is because I know a little secret, right? I drew a bunch of stars, and each star, right, has five triangles in it. And so, right, maybe it doesn't mean a lot, but you can kind of see where I'm going here, right? If your business is to create a widget that's in the shape of a triangle and you found a way to double your output in half the time, it'd be pretty valuable, right? Uh, the reason I know that is because I was in one of these groups and someone had me draw triangles very stupidly. And I said, oh, I got so many. I got 25 like Kevin. And then the leader said, hey, I'm going to double your output in half the time. And part of it's because of, again, it's that question of what is the value of one good idea? And we have a time in all of our peer groups of allowing one member to kind of present an idea that they have, and the group gets to speak into it and get to say, hey, here's some things that I see, or some different perspectives that I see that maybe help them see drawing triangles in a different way that can provide some real value, right? And so, silly little exercise, but again, I think it gets at the value of a good idea, and recognizing that the chance for a good idea is vastly multiplied and increased when you get 10 to 12 leaders who are in the same industry saying, hey, let's help each other grow together. So
What
that's
about
kind of the hope
quality?
of,
What about quality of drawing?
hey, my stars aren't too bad there, right? But no, I think you kind of are starting to maybe see the picture a little bit, right? If that's what we're hoping to do with these peer groups, and kind of what, again, this peer group coaching model looks like, of saying, hey, we're creating our very own personal board of advisors. who share leadership experience, who have gone through similar things we have gone through either previously or currently walking through them, who kind of share the same worldview and this background of following Jesus as we do, who are committed to each other's success, committed to confidentiality. I mentioned at the beginning, leadership can be really lonely and saying, hey, we have a group of people now who are saying we can't always share in our businesses and the people that we're working with or leading, but we now have a safe space where we can share and bear each other's burdens and be real and authentic to be able to support each other, a space to receive neutral and unbiased opinions, right? I think it can be hard sometimes to get unbiased opinions of saying we have people who maybe don't have a direct vested interest and can see things from a different angle to be able to speak that truth and that counsel into us. And so that's the hope of these peer groups of saying, hey, we want to create our own personal board of advisors that can walk with us and share kind of the things we're doing. uh, Last thing on kind of the bigger picture here, here's just some stories of people who are part of these groups across the country, and just some of again their ROIs and the things that they said, hey, this has actually been a model that's really helped me. Um, Not going to bore us with all these. That first one, right? A guy by the name of Chris, he says the right hiring decision at a critical moment to help stabilize our business and produced over 100,000 in additional sales. This is a member specifically kind of speaking to again in each of our groups, and we'll get into this. There's kind of a moment where a member gets to share their biggest thing that they have going on. And as a member, he kind of brought up, hey, I'm looking to make some big hiring decisions in my company, and I'm really debating. I feel like we need to shift the culture, and I don't know what that looks like. And he kind of presented what his ideal position and candidate would look like, and the group then got to speak into that and kind of provide some, hey, have you thought about this? Or if you hire that type of person, it's going to provide this kind of trajectory momentum. And all said and done, he said he left that conversation with his peer group and realized he was kind of asking the wrong questions and needed to kind of reshift specifically the roles that he was even looking to fill and the right type of person that he was looking in. And after about 2 years, he said, I made some really key hires that I wouldn't have made otherwise without the help of my group that ended up saving me a lot of time. Um, Highlighting another one, that bottom orange one, right? This guy by name Kevin Mangan. He says the advice of my group has saved me $300,000. Quick story, right? He's out in the Midwest, and his group, right? Specifically, as you can imagine, the Midwest. He worked for a snowplow company, and so he did a lot of bigger industrial jobs. But for smaller residential jobs, he said, I'm just losing so much time and money by sending my workers out there. And so he had this idea to create this. What you see there is called a snowcaster there to the right of this ability to be able to clear the snow a little faster. And he came to his group again in his time to share and kind of had this model all presented. And he got to the end of it, said, hey, poke holes in it. What do you guys see? What do you think? And one member says, hey, I have a background in injection molding. I know a guy that can help you with your kind of die cast mold to save you a lot of money. Another guy said, hey, I know someone in marketing that can get you some better ideas for marketing. And I know someone in the plastic industry can get you stuff at cost. And all of a sudden, then, right, you kind of see this snowballing a little bit of recognizing through the help of others, he was able to create this product for a lot less money that saved him a lot more time on the jobs that he was doing. And again, specific example to a very specific industry, but I think it kind of gets at the idea that you can hopefully kind of see of what's it look like when we have some group think together and helping us have this board of advisors that can help us think and grow. And so just again, some stories doesn't happen in every conversation after every meeting. Sure, you're not saving six figures, but I think we see that there is some success that we've seen in our groups across the country and again over these last 2.5 decades. Um, Something that our coaches have been seeing, right? And I think we can probably all relate to in some ways and others. We look at leaders and being leaders our own selves of oftentimes we find ourselves feeling overwhelmed of so much on our plates, the pressure, right, of saying, gosh, if I make one wrong move, everything feels so high stakes right now. I can't afford to do that. Questions like secular culture, how do I live and be a kingdom factor or steward of God's kingdom in my workplace when I'm in such a secular dog eat dog world trying to get ahead of each other? And so how do we live in that place? Lonely and isolated, we mentioned that one. Something about peer groups, right? I want to bring up this verse in First Peter 5:8, right? And Peter here, he says, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour. And right, as factors, as agents, as stewards of God's kingdom, trying to do business in a godly way, we got to believe and know, right, that the devil is trying to keep us from succeeding and is trying to make us stumble and fall. And it's kind of that idea, right, of a lion, right, as he seeks prey to devour. I often ask the question of who does the lion target in a herd, right, of a pack? And oftentimes people say, oh, he targets the weakest one, is who the lion's going to go after. And the reality is a lion from far off can't actually look at a herd and know which one is the weakest. But what they do know is which one is isolated and which one is alone because they attack that one. The power of the herd isn't going to keep the lion from attacking it. And so that's the one that the lion will go after and attack. And so if it says the devil is prowling around like a roaring lion seeking whom he can devour, Same thing, the devil's going to go after the one who's alone and who is isolated, who's not surrounded by a group of like-minded believers and followers of Christ that can hold us up and keep us accountable. And so that's the power, again, of peer groups of saying, hey, we want to surround ourselves with people that can encourage us and challenge us to keep moving forward and continue living in this kingdom mindset as we're called to do. So that's kind of again, wrapping up kind of our broad overview of why I think peer groups are really important. Uh, Shifting specifically kind of in our final 10 minutes or so here to, well, then what does that look like at Kingdom Factor? And if we kind of maybe see the value of peer groups, we even see the value of Christian peer groups, like-minded individuals coming around us, well, then what does that look like for us to live that out and be a part of one of these communities? And so for us at Kingdom Factor, all of our groups are based off of this verse. It's kind of our founding verse for all of our, again, our groups. It comes from Psalm 78:72. And it says, and David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. And kind of notice there's kind of three specific points to this verse. The first part, it says in David, right? David being an individual, a person, right? We probably know the story of David of he was someone who was a leader and was not without his flaws, right? He had a lot of mistakes in life, and yet at the end of his life, in 1 Samuel 13, it says that God called David a man after his own heart. And it was someone who had grown in his personal leadership that was given this affirmation by God Himself. And so I think recognizing that we need to lean into our own personal leadership, that David had to lean into his personal leadership and development to be able to live into being someone who was God, a man after God's own heart. And for us as leaders saying, hey, how do we men and women who are developing ourselves to be men and women after God's own heart as well? And so part of that is our own personal leadership. I think the second thing we see here in this verse is it says, with integrity of heart, he shepherded them. This kind of gets at the idea of doing the right things. My definition of leadership is often just a simple phrase of doing the right things the right way. And it kind of gets at that first part of we need to know what the right things that we're doing are to be have integrity of heart in our leadership. And so these are things like getting at kingdom business practice of how do we do things God's way. That third thing we see in this passage, right? It says, and with skillful hands, David led them. This gets into our business excellence, right? Of if leadership is doing the right things the right way, it's that second part of that definition of doing things right, of saying we need some operational excellence. And so these are kind of the three categories of what it looks like for us to lean into our leadership development as a peer group. Again, there's so many different types of coaching out there, but that's kind of what our unique value proposition is, and our distinctive of saying, hey, these are the three things we're going to lean into is our operational excellence, our kingdom business focus, and our personal and spiritual growth as leaders. And in the middle there is kind of what it looks like for us, again, to really lean into to growing together in these three areas. Who's our kind of ideal candidate or target or member criteria for being a part of one of these groups? Simply put, right, we're looking for leaders of leaders and leaders of people, people who have influence, people who are speaking directly into others' lives, people who have the time and the space to commit to something like this, but also have influence, right? And so the second part of that is having a Christian worldview, right? As you've probably seen, this is a big central part of what we're doing is growing personally and professionally, but also spiritually. And so wanting like-minded people, again, who are leaders and are Christians and followers of Christ is who we want to be a part of these groups. What do these groups look like? And I'll kind of breeze through this and leave some time for questions at the end. But for us, we meet once a month is kind of what these groups look like. We meet once a month. It's a 4 hour kind of dynamic meeting. I know that sounds like a lot of time, but yet we found that to be able to go below the surface and actually gain some real growth and depth, uh, having this time to really sit in the content and sit in each other's issues and things that we're bringing up allows us to really be able to grow. So we meet once a month, face to face or in person. I'm actually going to be starting up the first one of these in a couple weeks. February 10th is when kind of this first kind of peer group starting up. I already have a handful of people, and so we're going to be meeting in West LA here in Santa Monica, February 10th again from 7:30 to 11:30 a.m. in the mornings is kind of what we're doing. So it'll be that second Tuesday of every month is when we're going to be meeting. Um, so what these groups actually look like, these again once a month meetings. You'll see here's a snapshot of just kind of what our member portal looks like. So if you kind of are a part of our Kingdom Factor community, you have access to this, which has a database of hundreds of members again across the country for some networking. It has access to some best practice conversations we do once a month of bringing kind of a subject matter expert in. And so you'll have access to all of that. But specifically in these peer groups, we walk through 5 specific things in these groups. You'll kind of see there on the left-hand side there of again, the member portal, that first thing or a little bit down is prayer. First part of our meetings is prayer. We spend time as a group praying together. sharing our prayer requests, we actually input them here on the portal as a way to kind of just keep track of the prayer requests, to remind each other to be praying for each other throughout the week and month, to be able to look back and say the ways that God has answered prayer. And so prayer is kind of our grounding point as we start these meetings. Second thing is leadership content. It's about a 45-minute section of me as the facilitator will kind of bring up some sort of a leadership lesson that again kind of ties into one of these three things of our personal leadership, our spiritual leadership, and our business leadership, and kind of facilitating some discussion. We were doing one the other month of how do we integrate AI in the workplace and use that through a kingdom business practice. So some practical tools of leadership. That's the second piece. The third piece is crucial conversations. You'll remember kind of as I highlighted that story about Chris or Kevin earlier of some of the ideas they brought to the group. Each month, one member gets the floor for about 40 minutes to say, here's the one big thing that I'm working on either in my business or in my life that I need some feedback, some help on. So they have the opportunity to present again their biggest, greatest issue that they need help with, and then the group gets to speak into and provide some feedback. And so that's kind of the third part of the group. The fourth thing is godly counsel. This is a brief moment where each member gets to bring, hey, here's something I'm holding this month that I would like to talk through, right? Whether that's, hey, I need help finishing a website or finishing that proposal or making that hire, or hey, I have this personal issue going on with my family or my spouse. I really need some help to wrestle through. And so we collect those every month and then kind of have a chance to walk through and answer those questions again together as a group and support each other. And the final thing is imperatives. Each month we close our time by saying, hey, what's the one thing you need to get done this month? Whether that's again personally or professionally, committing to working out, committing to going on that date night with your spouse that you've been promising you're doing, committing to again getting that website up and going. What is that one thing you need to get done? And we hold each other accountable to it. We say, hey, we're going to set a little consequence. Of for us, it's hey, we're going to give a little bit of money if you don't do this to support our charity we all kind of agree upon as a way to say, hey, let's give back to the community a little bit, but also keep each other accountable to completing the goals that we said we're going to do. And so imagine the end of the year you get done and you have the 12 most important things you really needed to get done this year that you were held accountable to and actually got to see completion and see them through to fruition. And so really kind of cool to see the results that come from that space. And so those are again the five kind of components of prayer: some leadership content, crucial conversation where one member gets to share, godly counsel where we all get to kind of bring some feedback and support to each other, and then imperatives of kind of what's the one thing we want to complete. Just a couple more slides here. Again, here just kind of looking at some of the content and curriculum that we walk through each month. Again, fall into those three areas of personal leadership, biblical leadership, and business leadership. And so here's just some examples of different lessons that we've taught over the years and just some of the really robust content that we have. Again, just through a lot of time kind of doing this. And so that's some simple kind of content curriculum. Thing I always get at the end of this is leaders say, hey, I get this. It makes sense from a broad scale. It maybe even makes sense personally from my own life, but 4 hours a month, that's way too much time. I do not have time to commit to that. And that's the real truth, right? I'm too busy is often the biggest kind of question that I get is, well, how do I commit to making time for this? And again, the reality is none of us woke up today having more time on our hands than we knew what to do with. We're all busy. All members of these groups have the same busy workloads and a lot going on and a lot that they're stewarding and carrying. And so I think it's recognizing and asking the question of recognizing that leaders who are willing to make this a priority often find a lot of success from it, and recognizing that sometimes we need to trust God with our time and imagine what it would look like to devote 4 hours a month to saying, God, I want to invite you into what I'm doing and what I'm building, and to trust that God will see that and honor that and bless that. And so I was talking to a member a month or so ago, and he was saying, I was realizing when you kind of said, hey, it's 4 hours a month for a year, right? That's about 48 hours. It is 48 hours in a year. And he's like, I'll easily, kind of go to a conference for 48 hours, a 2-day retreat, and commit that time to it. And I come back from that retreat and I have all of these ideas and it's a fire hose and I may be able to apply one thing. He said, in some ways, it's the same amount of time that I was willing to devote to a 2-day kind of work getaway or retreat. Uh, and yet I'm spreading that out over a year. And at the end of it, instead of being overwhelmed with information, I now get to have one thing I get to apply and spread that out through a year. And so I think part of it is saying, hey, how do we reorient how we're thinking about this? And the reality is we are all too busy. And yet being able to take that step of faith and say, God, I can see the fruit that could come from this, and being able to devote my vocation to your kingdom and to help other people do that as well, and trusting God with that. And so I think it is a question we all have to wrestle through. Final slide here that just to kind of wrap it all up. And so I've been rambling a little bit, talking a bit, but I hope you kind of see again just the value and why I really see that there can be so much fruit from this, and why I think again for the last 2.5 decades we've seen countless stories of members saying, gosh, like, I'm so glad I stepped into this. And that's kind of our commitment, right? Is being a part of these Kingdom Factor peer groups of saying, hey, we're going to surround you with a coach who's for you and who's in your corner, myself, right? Who gets to reach out and pray for and walk alongside you. Collaboration, right? You get to be surrounded by a room full of people who are also for your good and want you to succeed and to help each other grow in that space. Community, right? Of saying you also get to share your wisdom and the things that God has put on your heart to walk through with other people. Content, right? That helps us think differently and shapes us and challenges us and pushes us. And that last thing of challenge of saying, hey, we want to be committed to iron sharpening iron, to challenging each other and to committing to the goals that we've set forth to allow ourselves to truly be kingdom factors who are stewards and ambassadors for God's kingdom through the work that He's entrusted us with. And so that's the hope. That's the point of all of this is to say, God, we want to devote our vocation to you, our time to you, the things that you have put in front of us, and let's do that together in community. And so that's an overview of Kingdom Factor. Again, what I'm doing, what I'm excited to be creating. And again, want to just kind of invite you all to be thinking about mate, how does this resonate with you? What would that look like to maybe be a part of something like this? Or two, who's someone that you know who is a leader who could benefit from being a part of something like this? And so, um, yeah, would love to, like I said, at the end of this, had a brief little survey for you. If you guys don't mind just pulling out your phone, if you have a moment and just kind of scanning this, this will take you to a brief just kind of feedback form. Again, just helpful for me to get feedback of one, how I can support you guys, but also how I can grow and improve. And so if you have a moment, just maybe scan that. It takes about 2 to 5 minutes to kind of complete. Just a few kind of questions on there. So again, thank you guys for just letting me share a little bit about Kingdom Factor and what I'm doing here as a coach, and just yeah, so excited about what God wants to do in this space. Again, not only the power of peer groups, but bringing like-minded Christian leaders together to say, hey, how do we live as factors and ambassadors for God's kingdom as we get to love each other well? And so yeah, I would love to follow up with you. Just if you have any more questions, so I'll kind of reach out after this, get sent out to you. But no, thanks again for coming and being a part of this, and look forward to seeing what God does in this space. All right, thank you guys.